Yes, thank you, Rhea.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much and welcome everyone.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to our Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group meeting today, Thursday, October 10th. We are so excited to have you all here. We have a very special guest today as well. A few special guests today. And in addition, today's meeting will focus on Measure A. And so before we pass it off on that, we would like to share a little bit more about our Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group. The mission of our Empowerment Congress at large is to educate, engage, and empower. And so with that, for our Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group, we're committed to educating and informing our community on the root causes of homelessness and evidence-based solutions and practices. We also are here to facilitate community discussions and engagement on policies and initiatives related to homelessness. So cue our Measure A discussion. And as well, we would like to provide opportunities to advocate with the community for policies and more resources to fund our multifaceted response to the homelessness crisis. As our founder, to me, always supervisor, Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas always shares and adequately points out is that homelessness is the moral crisis of our time. And so with that, this teaching today about Measure A is extremely poignant. So we'd like to thank everybody for joining us. And with that, I am going to pass it off to one of our guests that we're so excited to have today, Mr. Miguel Santana, President and CEO of the California Community Foundation.
Well, hello, everybody. It's so great to be part of this important conversation. As someone who lives in West Adams, I know this community well, and so glad to be part of something that is really transformative, not just for our generation of Angelenos, but for future generations. So Measure A was established was really created from the community. I'm here not only representing the California Community Foundation, but I'm also here representing 400,000 Angelenos throughout LA County who signed the ballot measure, which resulted in being placed on the ballot today. And as you know, it's before all of us on the November ballot. It is built on the best practices, independent research, and lessons learned from past investments, including Measure H and Measure Triple H at the city. And it provides clarity around one central question around that this issue has lacked, and that is the question and answer of who's in charge. Measure A establishes clear outcome-driven goals and establishes accountability, making it very clear that the Board of Supervisors, along with the 88 cities, are responsible for developing and putting in place a comprehensive approach to the crisis that not only deals with the immediate issues of those who are on the street today, but ensures that we have an ongoing program of prevention. Those goals are articulated in ballot measure, focuses on establishing outcomes around moving people from the street into housing, ensures that it provides outcomes around the production of affordable housing, expansion of mental health and addiction services, as well as ensuring that we have ways of providing the people the help that they need once they are housed. It makes it very clear that the cities and the county must work together to establish those goals. And it establishes that their ability to proceed will be informed by independent audits. They're required to actually assess what's working and what's not, and to move dollars from those programs that are not working to dollars that are working. The other thing that it does that really informed by what we've heard from the community is that it makes it clear that there's a local return for all cities, including the city of Los Angeles, the city of LA is anticipated to get over $65 million of ongoing revenue, so it could implement strategies that are consistent with what Mayor Bass has been leading with her initiative around Inside Safe, that has been the most effective in reducing the number of homelessness in her first year in term by 10%. We intentionally did not create a sunset clause because we felt it was too important to make this investment on an ongoing basis. It was critical that instead of thinking about homelessness as being a temporary problem, that we be on that we're honest and that we establish an ongoing revenue stream that manages this program on a forever basis. And so, but we also created enough flexibility in this funding stream so that future generations of Angelenos could deploy strategies that are informed by things that they've learned in the past. And so it is treating our issues much like we treat issues in every other way that government engages in, from public safety to firefighting to education to healthcare. These are government services that have ongoing funding streams. We don't think about public safety as having a beginning, middle, and end, or education as a beginning, middle, and end. They require ongoing revenue and ongoing strategies and accountability. And so Measure A finally establishes a system countywide and builds an infrastructure that will outlive this generation of Angelenos. It will result in more affordable more affordable housing and deploy strategies that are much faster and cheaper than the ones that we've done in the past. Excuse me. And it tackles the services and affordable housing concurrently, as opposed to what we did previously, where the city had Measure H, which built affordable housing, and the county did the services. It does this in a concurrent way and requires joint planning. The last thing I'll say before I'm happy to answer questions is that there is some real consequences if we do not proceed with this initiative. As we all know, Measure H expires in 2 years. And so what is needed is the extension of the funding that supports those programs. There are currently close to 30,000 Angelenos who are relying on these services that are funded by Measure H. And if that funding stream is no longer in existence, those people are very likely to return to homelessness. And what experts have determined that it would likely increase the number of unhoused people countywide by 25%. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Rhea and all. Thank you so much, Miguel. Miguel, before we want to turn it over for questions, but first I just want people to really know who you are. And sorry, I got caught in traffic, so not at a desk, but I promise I'm pulling over right now. Miguel Santana is the president and CEO of the California Community Foundation.
And I'm gonna tell you who he really is.
Uh-oh. Our great supervisor.
We have a guest speaker. The voice of
I'm
God
going to
here.
turn it over to you, Supervisor. I just wanted people to understand that he's former president of the Weingart Foundation, Pomona Fairplex, but before that, the chief administrator officer with the city. I don't have my notes on the county. I know he been involved with Home for Good and United Way, a board member of United Way for a while, where homelessness has just been a true passion. And in addition to his role as CEO and president, he is also the co-chair of something that maybe he can talk to about, the leadership table, which is a table of accountability for a regional plan and a complement, if you've heard of the executive committee for regional alignment for homelessness. And also, are you chair or co-chair of La Casa, the new affordable housing homeless solution? So with that, I'm going to be quiet and I will turn it over to the both of you, and then we'll open up for broad question and answers. Supervisor?
Well, thanks very much. Greetings to all. And Miguel, thank you for accepting our invitation to engage in a conversation in which we have participated for a good period of time. The fact of the matter is, Miguel and I have been tracking now for heading close to 20 years. We met when I joined the Board of Supervisors at 2008, and it may have been prior to that we had some dealings, but that was the point which we can identify collaboration with consistency. Always relevant to know from a perspective of background, undergraduate at Whittier College, graduate school at Harvard, and the story goes from there. But his contribution can't be denied, and we want to lift that up. I take note of not only his contribution, but his consciousness, his own journey biographically, his own studies and so forth. And so fully cognizant of his own demographics, but he doesn't allow that demographic to define in a narrow sense how he relates to others. That's a distinction that is really important in this day and time. And I think it is completely consistent with the Empowerment Congress ethos to educate, engage, and empower. So we're delighted that he is here. We're delighted that all of you are here. And Miguel, we have a good turnout for you tonight. They'll have questions. I'll leave with a few. You've been a long time advocate and collaborator to a range of approaches addressing this homeless crisis, this housing insecurity crisis, this crisis of houselessness. Some of us describe it as the hard edge of poverty. And yet you keep pushing. There's a level of hopefulness, some call it optimism. And it might be useful to begin by asking you from a personal perspective, what sustains you in your push toward recognizing the work that needs to be done in that. And I have a few more questions, and then others will weigh in afterwards.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's great seeing you as always. Thank you for that introduction and your partnership. So I've been working on the issue of homelessness my entire adult life. I started off working on this when I was a college student, as Mark said, at Whittier College. My first week, I volunteered at a local shelter. And by the time I graduated college, I was running that shelter. And then throughout that time, I worked on this issue at the County of Los Angeles when I was deputy CEO of LA County, overseeing all of the initiatives around homelessness. As CAO, I recommended Measure Triple H, which was a $1.2 billion housing bond to build 10,000 units of permanent supportive housing, and then worked with then Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas on Measure H, which complemented for the city of Los Angeles by providing services to those people who are unhoused and helping them get the services needed so that they can move into housing. And very involved in supporting Mayor Bass in what she's doing, have been an advisor to her on this work, as well as serving as her appointee to an authority, Joint Powers Authority, that has the purpose of financing affordable housing countywide. That authority is anticipated to receive between $400 and $500 million a year should Measure H pass to ensure that we have affordable housing throughout LA County. But I think to get to the heart of your question, for me, as someone who has experienced poverty and certainly am very fortunate to be in the role that I am. My life trajectory, if I was a statistic, would not have me where I am today. I see the humanity behind every person who we walk by, drive by on a daily basis of the unhoused. And for me, I see our neighbors, our family, our brothers and sisters. And I think, as Mark has articulated, this is the biggest moral issue facing our community. I think 100 years from now, generations from now, will wonder, how could this generation of Angelenos tolerate seeing human suffering in their daily lives and not do what was necessary to end it? And I don't want to be on the side where I haven't been engaged in using resources and the privilege that I've been able to garner throughout my career, and not be on the side of developing and implementing the solutions necessary so that our fellow Angelenos aren't experiencing the suffering that we see. We know that homelessness is really the manifestation of all of our broken systems, our foster care system, our juvenile justice system, our incarceration. It is a reflection of or it's a direct descendant of systemic racist policies that have been in existence in this country from the very beginning. The redlining that formed the boundaries of LA County and created the segregation that we still experience today. And so we have a responsibility as Angelenos, as this generation, to bring an end to the failures of the past, and really put in place the investments, the structures, and the accountability so that all Angelenos are housed and have the good life. And so for me, I am committed as a public servant, as I have throughout my career, to always engage in raising the tough questions, and holding people accountable, and making investments and using the authority and the resources that I have to bring systemic solutions to our community.
Appreciate your response, and I'll pick up on another question right there, if I may. It deals with the issue of disproportionate racial impacts in terms of homelessness. And I guess the sharpest question I can pose might be how Measure A will deliberately and strategically address these inequities. The work that was done in 2017, 2018 on the matter of the ad hoc committee on Black people experiencing homelessness, and the racial disparities and the increase in other ethnicities around the question of homelessness. How is it that Measure A purports to address racial inequities? A word on that, Miguel.
So, I mean, as I stated, this is the homeless crisis is a direct descendant of the racist policies of the past, the racist systems of the past. And as you pointed out, the important research that was done that clearly articulated that African Americans are disproportionately represented among our unhoused population. I was proud that when I was the head of the Weingart Foundation, we gave grants to ensure that report was being done and disseminated and continued to be focused on. So to answer your specific question, whenever there's a new funding stream, there's always a political way of distributing resources, kind of spreading it evenly throughout the county. This measure prioritizes communities that have a disproportionate number of unhoused people, and it uses data as a way to determine the distribution of funding, using, of course, an equity lens in how that is being done. So that means not every community will get the same amount. It will be based on where the communities are facing houselessness. It will be based on those data that clearly shows which communities are experiencing displacement due to gentrification, where housing affordability is the most acute. And so we always know that it's communities of color in particular that are disproportionately impacted. So this measure prioritizes the distribution of funding to communities that have experienced this disproportionate burden.
I think the critical question that many want to, I'm glad you touched on, I want you to dig into it a little bit more, if you will. As you talked about a long-term investment, the argument has been raised about the sunset on the measure. And some feel without a sunset, there will be less of a sense of urgency to address the matter. And advance your most compelling argument to dissuade those who may be of that point of view. Point out what the flaws in that argument might be in light of what we're up against.
So at the heart of this issue is accountability. Government receives various different funding streams. We all pay property tax, we pay sales tax, we pay gasoline tax. And in all of those revenue streams that are distributed, there are no requirement that any goals be set, that any solutions be met. They're funding streams that give government the resources necessary so they could respond when there's a fire, when they could respond when there's a crime, so that they could educate our kids. But there's no expectation that they actually deliver on outcomes. This is the only funding stream that I know of, and I was the city administrative officer overseeing a $9 billion budget for the city of Los Angeles for 8 years. This is the only funding stream that exists where government, those who are elected, are required, they're mandated to establish goals that are tangible, goals that you can count, and that they will be evaluated and audited on their success or failure of those goals. It also requires that they prioritize those programs and initiatives that are working and defund those things that are not working. Government doesn't work this way. This is the first time there's real accountability involved. And it clarifies who's in charge of ending homelessness, who's in charge of expanding affordable housing, and it puts real accountability behind it. But it also acknowledges that this is not a temporary problem. We didn't get here overnight. This is an ongoing issue. To be able to build housing, affordable housing at the scale of the need, we need an ongoing revenue stream to do it. We need ongoing strategies in order to ensure that our community has the services that they need, mental health services, addiction services, so that not only when they're unhoused, but services to ensure that they stay housed, like eviction prevention services. So families that are experiencing, who are a crisis, someone passes away, or they have a medical bill, or they lose their employment, are facing eviction. This is actually an ongoing revenue stream that provides funding for services that our families need. Those problems we know are not going to go away. You can't put a time limit on when families will be facing those issues. You can't put a time limit around when families are no longer going to need mental health services or addiction services. We know that our community deserves these services, and it's been a long period of disinvestment, as Mayor Bass has articulated many, many times, that created the situation that we're in. So in many ways, we are reversing racist policies of the past. We are reversing the lack of prioritization to our communities of color, our communities of greatest need. And so to do that, it's going to require ongoing revenue that is predictable, that you could count on when you need it, and and a level of accountability to ensure that it supporting the families and the individuals that most need it.
Well, thank you for those thorough responses. Madam Co-Chairs, I'm going to turn it back to you. Miguel, I'm going to just pose one question that you don't have to answer now. You may want to speak to it in your wrap up. But when reading the LA Times and other outlets that say that this is very, very tight, although Measure A seems to be gaining ground, nobody's taking anything for granted here. In your conclusion, I want to know in the coming week, what can each of those on the call who are so inclined do to widen that gap, to push Measure A across the finish line to make sure that it passes? Not to be answered now, maybe weave it into some of the other answers to some of the questions, but I want to thank you again for being here and for all the rest on the line. Madam Co-Chairs.
Thank you so much, Supervisor, for your thoughtful questions and just helping us understand this issue from a different perspective. Miguel, we have a few. We're going to want to open up to question and answer, if that's okay. We have a few people who had submitted some questions that I'll call on first, and then we will open it up so folks can just raise their hand. But first, I see on my screen, I know Nathaniel Patterson had a question. Nathaniel represents some of our youth across the county. So Nathaniel, please go ahead with your question.
Yes. Thank you. Glad to be here. In the spirit of World Mental Health Day, I wanted to kick off my question with a mental health related question. Really just in the beginning, you spoke of different strategies that tackle a multitude of different topics. I wanted to know of any innovative strategies that Measure A can implement to better support our youth facing mental health crises, and just in general, how Measure A will just tackle the intersectionalities between mental health and houselessness.
So it really does it in three ways. Number one, there are many reasons why people become unhoused. What we do know is that the majority of the reasons why people experience homelessness is due to economic reasons. I live in West Adams, and for many years we had an unhoused neighbor in our community, 75 years old, unable to see. And we worked very hard to make sure she got housing. And her situation was, her Social Security wasn't enough for her to continue living in housing. She had lost the home that she grew up in when her family sold it, and she couldn't find a new place to live. And when we met her and supported her into housing, she was suffering from mental illness. Now, on day one, when she experienced homelessness, was she suffering from mental illness? We don't know that. But what we do know is that it is almost impossible to heal. It is impossible to really advance in your therapy and in your treatment if after your session, after meeting your psychiatrist, after your getting therapy, you end up going back to a tent and onto the street. So the fact that the intersectionality between houselessness and mental health is true for those who are experiencing homelessness today. Their mental health, being homeless, contributes to any mental health challenges that someone may be facing. It may create them, it may trigger them. So that is the worst setting for someone to heal, for someone to receive treatment. So by investing in housing people and keeping them housed before they end up experiencing homelessness, and when they are in house and moving them into permanent housing and providing them the services necessary so that they are housed, is the best way of treating not only senior citizens like the one that we supported in our neighborhood, but young people. The fastest growing sector of the unhoused are senior citizens who are being priced out and young people who are not able to find housing. And so this ensures that there is an ongoing revenue stream to protect people from experiencing homelessness in the first place. And by doing so, allowing them, if they need mental health services, this provides an ongoing revenue stream for those services while they're housed in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question? I did see a question on the chat, and then I'll go ahead and answer. Measure A, kind of what's at the heart of the measure, and I think Vincent Harris answered it. It is, and it's technically a sales tax. There's currently a sales tax, Measure H, which is a 1/4 cent sales tax. This repeals Measure H and replaces it with a 1/2 cent sales tax. And some people have asked me, well, why is it larger than the original sales tax? Well, Measure H supports the services side of what's needed. 30,000 Angelenos are currently being served by Measure H. What Measure A does, it provides the services, and it also provides funding for the housing, which is critical in, as was asked earlier, the intersection of these two issues. It's hard to heal. It's hard to really receive the benefits of treatment if you're doing that while you're on the street. So this provides a housing as well.
Thank you. I know I see David's hand up and William's hand up. I just want to call on Janice Martin because she pre-submitted a question too. Then I'll call on David and William. Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Arjuna. And good evening, everyone. And Mr. Santana, thank you so much for being here. I have a question. I recognize that Measure A is so much broader than Measure H, but I've been in this system of change since the beginning of Measure H. So that's where my familiarity is rooted. And I remember when it was launched, there was a lot of discussion and hope that Measure H would come down to the community level, and there would be opportunities for financial as well as supportive engagement from the faith community. I happen to be an ecumenical liaison, so I'm always looking at and lifting the faith community. And I'm wondering if there's been any discussion that you're aware of that talks about an engagement with the faith community or community-based organizations in this plan that is definite as opposed to just hopeful. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that we were intentional is to not be prescriptive on how the resources are being delivered, because we know that there are some efforts that have worked and there are some that have not worked, and there are things that we could do better. And meeting community in places that in their own communities and ways that they organize is part of what we need to do as we implement the program. So Alisa asked me to talk about a table that I co-chair that's part of the governance structure around how Measure A dollars will be distributed. It is a table of civic leaders that include philanthropy from the work community that I come from, include service providers, folks who are in the business community, but we also were intentional to bring in members from the faith community. They have a seat at the table. We have a handful of members on this table that are representing the faith community, because we understand that we have to ensure that we're providing those services in a way that people best receive them. And not every community receives the benefits in the same way. And you know, in some communities, the backbone of that community is the faith community, and we need to make sure that these resources are not only accessed by those entities, but as important that the outreach that is done in that context.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, David, and thank you for your patience.
You're welcome. Miguel, I want to commend you. This is such a major issue in Los Angeles and surrounding areas in today's time.
Mr.
Nathan,
Miller,
thanks for hitting the nail on the head. And can you
We're
hear me?
having a hard time hearing
Yeah.
you, Mr. Miller.
Okay,
your
let me try
audio
something
is
different now.
yeah.
Yeah, your audio is a little shaky.
Why don't
Okay,
we
what
go-
about now?
Oh, much better.
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Sometimes I'm at home and the reception is not that great here. But Miguel, I
Yeah.
want to commend you for a job well done in terms of facing and tackling this major issue that's surrounding LA and other areas. Nathaniel pretty much addressed the concern that I had, and that was with mental health. And I guess the other problem that I'm thinking about, what about drug addiction? Does this measure have means for assisting those people? A lot of times the mental health leads to drug addiction. So how
Yes,
would we address that?
Yes, this revenue stream is to expand mental health and addiction services. It is, we know that unfortunately addiction is in our community, that it contributes to people experiencing homelessness, people who are unhoused, are sometimes exposed to drugs and alcohol, and they need services as part of their treatment to get better so that they can move into housing and stay in housing. So yes, this Measure A does provide funding for addiction services.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And of course, I'm David Miller with our weekly Los Angeles newspaper.
Well, so nice meeting you, Mr.
Same
Miller.
here.
Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Miller. Will Jackson, I see your hand. Good to see you.
Hey, good seeing you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Will Jackson, and I'm the co-chair with HPRI, the Homelessness Policy Research Institute at USC. And so, you know, my brief question was basically in regards to how Measure A may or could be used when it comes to retention for those that are offering these services, right? Because it's great to have all these various things that Measure A can and may go towards when it comes to services for those experiencing homelessness or those that are in the post-homelessness phase, having gone from living on the streets or the homeless experience to not being housed. But what in Measure A will there be available to support individuals who work with the homeless, right? What in Measure A will be going towards those who are working in homeless services to continue to provide those services, and can then furthermore help with agencies and organizations retaining their talent so that they're not lost due to the stressors and financial and otherwise when it comes to this.
I appreciate that question because it's a very important one. I mean, so many people who are currently serving the in-house, are they themselves very close to experiencing homelessness? And we were very thoughtful about that specific issue. The first is that when you create an ongoing revenue stream, then those agencies, the nonprofit organizations that provide those services can rely on an ongoing revenue stream so that they can build the workforce and pay them the living wage that they need so that they can thrive while they're helping our most vulnerable neighbors. And it's when you don't have a predictable revenue stream, when you have to scramble, when you have to take from Peter to pay Paul, when you have to, limit how much you pay your employees, limit how much you grow your organization to provide these critical services that create the insecurity that many of those who are doing the services do experience. So it's one more reason why we did not put an expiration date on this, because our community angels who are out in the work in the community helping our most vulnerable need to have the guarantee that they're going to get paid, that they're going to be paid a living wage. The other thing that this does, it creates a table where labor is invited to provide recommendations on how to ensure that we're constantly catching up to the wage that are required to serve this critical population. And wages is often what limits retention in those services. So by paying people a living wage, by providing an ongoing revenue stream and making sure that labor has a seat at the table, we hope that it will increase the number of folks who are interested in going into this field, and will make sure that they stay in the field.
Thank you, Mr. Santana, as that is, a critical aspect, of the work that we do. And I think that when it comes to Measure A, and I myself am an advocate of homeless outreach workers on first line, those who are working on the first line, being recognized as first responders. And so I'd love to see how we could incorporate this measure into advocating and pushing that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for what you do. Cynthia Zuniga.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Cynthia Zuniga. I am with the Girls Club of Los Angeles. First of all, I appreciate that there's infrastructures being built around this. About approximately almost a year and a half, no, 2 years ago, not a little bit more, I was living in this area of Watts. I'm an advocate for Watts. I grew up in Watts, and we found out last minute, they gave us a notice that there was a homeless building that was going to be built right on Watts, right next to the Ted Watkins Park, as a matter of fact. And none of the neighbors, none of us were aware of it. So we quickly got stakeholders involved. We went, and advocated for the community, and nobody in the neighborhood was aware of what, we were okay with supporting, right, the homeless and doing, we were excited because we're like, okay, what kind of building is this? Then we found out that they were going to bring the people that were on Skid Row. So there was no infrastructure that was going to be put around it. Like, for example, what was going to happen when they had, a breakdown and, people that were on drugs, like a lot of the concerns that are being brought, on this call. And we did advocate, and they did not end up building it. They end up making a resource center for the community, because we advocated. We're like, wait a minute, the Jordan Downs are right down the street. What is this going to do to our children? To have, we fought so hard to get it into a safe neighborhood for the children to go outside and play. And now they're going to build this building with no infrastructure. And it was just the way the plan was put together, and the fact that they didn't involve the community. We had to advocate, and thank goodness they didn't end up building it. We would have been okay, of course, as a community, if it would have been like a place to help the community, right? Not make it worse, because as we know, right, systemic racism and all these things that have happened in the past already have caused, as we just brought it up on this platform. So I do appreciate all the infrastructure and everything that's being done, to be able to make sure that all these things are in place when supporting, right? We want to make sure they're supported at every level, because mental health, we know it's a big issue, and it's so much, like you all said, it's going to take time, but it's good to know that there's infrastructures being put in place. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so much for raising that. I think that when you don't have a reliable, permanent, accountable revenue stream, then things don't get done in the way they should get done. So, hearing your story, You know, obviously providing housing is important, but also ensuring that the infrastructure of services are part of it is equally as important. And the second thing is ensuring that every community, not just our community, has an infrastructure and a place to house individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And it's not tolerable that our community gets used as a place where disproportionate number of unhoused people are placed. We're happy to always do our fair share. We're so happy to support our neighbors, but it has to be county-wide. And so this is an initiative that provides an infrastructure at a county-wide basis throughout the North County, the West Side, in the Valley, in the San Gabriel Valley. Every community has to do their part, and the solution should not be concentrated in one part of the county.
Thank you. Grace Waltman? Grace, oh, there you go. I just come off mute.
Okay, sorry. I've been on Zoom calls all day. So thank you so much, Miguel, for really honing in on accountability. You explained it in a way that I should have known, but I really understood it, and it helped me kind of reframe the question I was going to ask. So I do a lot in the LA County. So I recently took on the chair role for the South Bay Coalition and Homelessness. I teach at the USC Safe Communities Institute, and I work with a lot of pastors and churches around foster care issues. So one of the things that has been a consistent theme, and I was at a business conference yesterday, trying to advocate for this tax has been tough in these communities, but I see a consistent theme. The business executive I spoke to said, I volunteer for my account in the West Side. I won't tell which one. Elisa will probably figure it out at some point, but he had shared frustration. I've even tried to fill housing, and he said something to me that first responders say, people in the community, when you try to give them information, hey, call LA HOP, the line. Everybody's saying, we want a phone number that works. And it seems like this is a system reform, and I know that Measure A doesn't cover that, but I think you sit in a very important position to try to see how we can fix the system, because people don't feel confident about it, but they do want to help. And they're not sure because they don't understand where the money's going and all sorts of things. So any thoughts about that in itself?
Well, I think, let's be honest, we really don't have a system. We have a lot of efforts that are working to support our unhoused neighbors, a lot of good work, but it's not a system. It's not a system that you could count on. And I say this, by trying to help one person, one unhoused neighbor in our neighborhood, in the avenues where I had to be her advocate every step along the way to ensure that she got a housing voucher, to ensure that she received the support that she needed, to ensure that she ultimately got housed, and even when she was housed, that she received the support. And so there were a lot of discrete efforts that were taking place to help her, but it's not a system in the same way that you would want, that you as you would help your family member or someone in your community. So what we're creating is a system. And it's going to take time to establish it, to make sure that it's accountable, to make sure that there's a beginning, middle, and end, that when you call a number, it actually works. But we have never funded a system to the level to make it work. We haven't created any accountability to ensure that there were ways of measuring what success looks like. This measure actually mandates that there be clarity about what are the services supposed to look like when someone's housed, that there be a consensus on that and that be evaluated. So we're basically creating a system countywide that ties together all of those discrete efforts that are happening and puts it under one umbrella, or under one system that is much more reliable and effective. And, homelessness is really one of the only issues that we treat this way. We don't treat our education system this way. We don't treat our public safety this way or fire response. So we're trying to elevate how we respond to the crisis. So it's not just episodic, but it's done in a systemic way where there's clear accountability and goals.
And Ray, I think you had a question. I see Nathaniel's hand, Congress and Neighborhood, and Beverly, Ms. Rowe's hand, but I think Ray, you had a question that someone else had submitted during the registration you wanted to ask.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Dr. Orduña. Miguel, we got a question about how will Measure A's increased funding be allocated across the 5 primary goals? And what are the specific metrics for success for each goal?
So Measure A establishes the expectation of the goals. It doesn't set those goals. And the reason it doesn't is that the table that I serve as co-chair is in the process of creating what those goals should actually be. And then it is the executive committee, which is made up of the mayor and the board of supervisors and representatives of the other 88 cities, to adopt those goals. So we didn't want to just throw out there and make up some goal that would or not be made. And goals are evolving; they don't change. And so we wanted to make it clear what goals should be set up, and we wanted to be clear about who's accountable for meeting those goals. We wanted independent audits to make sure that we have data and information about how well these goals are being met, and we wanted the expectation that when programs are failing, that that revenue stream goes to those programs that are succeeding.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
We had another compelling question that came in during registration, and I think it alludes to what you spoke about, what you and Supervisor Marti spoke about with the causes of homelessness to begin with. And this question says, would this measure address some of the non-financial, for example, regulatory or process-related hurdles to expanding affordable housing? If so, how?
Could you restate the question? I'm not sure I quite understand it.
Sure. So they're asking, will Measure A address any of the current hurdles we have to expanding affordable housing, and in particular, non-financial hurdles, more kind of policy and process oriented?
So the housing authority that I serve on as vice chair, that will be receiving 40% of the revenue to finance the building of affordable housing in LA, has adopted some clear priorities. And one of the priorities is that, with the expectation that Measure A passes, is that funding will be distributed by need, so those communities that need it. And second, will be distributed by those communities that are ready to move quickly. And what, one of the first things that Mayor Bass did is that she did an executive directive to ensure that developments that are 100% affordable get fast-tracked in the development process. We are, as a financing authority, will prioritize those communities that are actually advancing the building of affordable housing, that have prioritized the building of affordable housing. There are a lot of cities in Southeast LA County, in the San Gabriel Valley part of our community, who want to build affordable housing and simply do not have the revenue stream to do it. So if they prioritize it, if they're prepared to fast track to ensure that they're not so that the housing gets built quickly and cost effectively, then they will be the first to receive the funding.
Thank you. Dr. Orduña, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a few more of the questions that people submitted. So to those with their hands up, we're going to address a few of the questions from registration and then pass it back to those with their hands up. How can Measure A funds be used for home ownership for those needing help that need to get a better opportunity than just being renters. So I think they're thinking about intergenerational barriers in home ownership.
So Measure A encourages homeownership and is inviting cities and communities that have proposals that will help give greater opportunities for families to purchase homes. One way of doing that is by making land available. So a city may choose that the proceeds that they're going to use from Measure A will be to buy land and to allow that land to be used for homeownership. And by subsidizing the development, by having the land be part of that, the overall development, it reduces the cost per home, and it also guarantees that it stays affordable, which is equally as important.
And then the last one from the registrant, the pre-registration questions is, how will cities access dollars allocated for local control? Will the funds be subject to any guidelines or criteria for those cities?
You know, the way the distribution of the dollars is going to be done by a formula, and it's again based on need. So it's not everybody gets the same. It's literally those communities that have disproportionate numbers of unhoused people, those communities that are experiencing housing insecurity to the greater extent, are being provided funding to help meet that need. Now, on top of that, cities will receive their local return, and the guidelines are that it must go to serve to provide housing for the unhoused, and for the services side must be used to help people who are experiencing homelessness or to prevent homelessness.
Thank you so much. Dr. Orduña, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all. We know there were several questions that were submitted that we won't be able to get through tonight, but I'll commit to making sure we find some answer to you and get distributing that back out to the group. So thank you for your patience. Congress, I can't see all Congress of Neighborhoods.
Could I just
Sure.
close with one last thing,
Mhm.
Lisa, if I could? It just to what the point that Mark raised earlier about ways that you could be involved. So, you know, obviously it's very important for you to vote, and my sense is that this is a community that votes and it engages. It's important for you to be informed, and if you have studied the issue, if you believe that Measure A is part of the solution, we encourage you to vote for Measure A and to actually vote and encourage your family and friends to do the same. This is a critical issue for our community, and to get involved in different efforts that are trying to make sure that our community is aware. The California Community Foundation is very committed to this issue. We have invested more than $4 million to ensure that Measure A gets placed on the ballot, that there's a robust campaign for it, but also supporting community-based organizations throughout LA County, making sure that people are informed. We're specifically supporting communities of color, communities who have a lot at stake in this election, and making sure that the vote gets outreach. And there's various websites that are being put on the screen here, so I encourage you to explore those as you move forward. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Miguel. Thank you so much for your time. I know there were a few more questions, and we have a few others involved in the community that are being very active in Measure A, that maybe we could take some of the weight off of Miguel after a long day and such thoughtful questions. Thank you again for your leadership on this and for your time with Empowerment Congress tonight.
All right, take care, everybody.
You too. Thank you. I don't know, Congress and Neighborhood. Sorry, I don't know. See your name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi. Good evening. My name is Dorsey Dujan, and I am chair of the Congress of Neighborhoods, but also the secretary of the West Adams Neighborhood Council. But I am representing myself. And what I really wanted to ask about was the fact that I live in a senior building that is one side seniors and the other side veterans. A great many people have been homeless. But what I've noticed is when they come into the building and they have an apartment, there is a breakdown, whether it's with their mental faculties or the transition from being homeless for a very long time. There seems to be a period of adjustment that doesn't happen, because I believe that they really need some guidance on how to all of a sudden now find yourself in a home that's warm, that you have most of the things that you need, and there's certainly someone in the building to help you to get that. However, because of the emotional difficulties with a great many, they don't know how to take care of the home. And this building is now just about 5 years old, and walls have been dug into with knives, floors have been dug up, appliances not working that could be working. And this is because I know that these folks are having a very, very difficult time in making these adjustments. So this isn't the only building that has that problem. We also have a drug problem, where we've got people coming to the building who are selling drugs on a daily basis, practically on an hourly basis. So my thought is, where's the disconnect to people who actually really need that help on getting adjusted? Because some of them have actually ended up homeless again, because they weren't able to take care of themselves within the housing. So does that make sense to you?
No, it does completely, Ms. Dujon, and thank you for that question, because I know that's a question that many people have. And I think the best way to answer, I'm going to call on my colleague, I hope I'm not putting her on the spot, Shannon Murray, who is head of the SPA 6 Coalition and works at Watts Labor, because that is a concern. We talk about housing first and moving people into housing. And that came up even in a question around, well, what are those supports that people have access to? So Shannon, do you mind if I turn that over to you?
Sure. And can you guys hear me? Because I have to use my phone for sound and okay.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, you're clear. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the things that Measure A will do is expand the number of services that are in buildings. The money will follow people from the street into their unit so that they can get the needed services like you're talking about, that it sounds like a lot of your folks aren't getting. Like, for example, our team goes out, there's once in a while, we might go to someone's house every day for a little while if they need us. And if we need to connect them to mental health services, to other people that can either come into their home, or we get them out of their home so that they can get their needs addressed. A big chunk of this funding is used for intensive case management services, which is really, again, it's you stay with the person all the way through. And some people are going to need that for the rest of their life. So that's another reason why there can't really be a sunset on this, because some of these funds we are going to need for people for a long period of time. Since Measure H has been in effect, we were working with maybe 150 people that we had permanently housed, and we were keeping them housed. And now we're able to work with, we have about 600 households that we've been able to move from the streets and then provide the services to keep them housed. And the number of people that actually leave their housing is very low, considering, again, a lot of the people that we do work with are coming straight from encampments. And again, we do kind of the wraparound. We get in there, we build relationship with them, and approximately 60% of the funding for Measure A will be going to these type of services, whether it's in units that are scattered all over the city or in a building that has all units that are for people that were experiencing homelessness. Also, I think, should I talk a little bit more about what else we'll lose and what we can expand with this funding?
Sure.
Again, Measure H, which is the precursor to this, was a godsend to us in a lot of ways. The last 6 years has been a lot. I've been doing this work since in Skid Row in 1996. And so changer for us because it has just completely expanded what we're able to do. We have, as a whole, the city or the funding was able in 23-24, it was about $524 million from Measure H funds. 22,000 permanent supportive housing units, which is what I'm talking about, the services connected to the housing. About 5,000 interim beds, about $60 million in a program called, it was Rapid Rehousing, and now it's time-limited subsidies, which basically we're able to take people, put them in a unit, start working with them. Sometimes people are able to increase their income so they can afford their unit on their own, or it gives us up to 2 years to work with someone to get into something else that they can afford, and they can get on all the waiting lists and all the different things that they need. As well as a huge increase in a program called Problem Solving, which is really trying to catch people before they come into the homeless system. So that can be security deposits, that can be 3 to 4 months of rent that they're behind, car repairs, all of those different kind of flexible things. So that's how much we're spending on it now. When we pass Measure A, we'll be able to double those efforts. And they're also going to pull a chunk of money to actually help develop more affordable housing, which is one of the things that we are missing the most.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for that. Because as I try to myself understand what's the difference between H and A and why is this so significant outside of the dollar amount, that focus on actual dollars to build affordable housing. So it's not just City of LA's responsibility, but this becomes a countywide responsibility. And also looking at prevention in addition to services, I think are huge game changers that we haven't had. Eli, I see your hand up, but Will has mentioned this for a while, and I know we have Dr. Seth Pickens in the house, who's the new managing director of the Homelessness Policy Research Institute, and looking at this issue from more of an academic perspective. Dr. Pickens, would you like to just share with our audience tonight any insight or guidance that you have on Measure A?
Sure. And appreciate it, Dr. Orduna. Appreciate it. Brother Mark Ridley Thomas, thank you so much. And everybody working hard on these things. So from a research perspective, this is just my breakdown. This is not necessarily completely authoritative, but as I'm seeing the situation, and I think we're all here in support of Measure A, it's going to build work on making housing more affordable, more housing, mental health, substance abuse, addressing all of these issues. But I think, and it's coming through in the chat, so Measure H, Triple H, Measure A, they were all bold ideas, great ideas, innovative, strong objectives, strong direction. Like I said, they're bold things. But I think what I'm kind of hearing is that we know that a piece of legislation alone is not enough. And even getting it passed is not enough. It is very much in the implementation. So as I see the research, I think if I would put it in a call to action, speaking to all constituencies, it would be around holistic human empowerment being key to this or anything really working. I saw in the chat, Velveteen Rabbit said this, you know, that more training is needed, you know, because people need to work on themselves before they're fit to help others. Now, I don't mean that in any sort of a attack on anyone, but it's true. And it also came up where a lot of service providers, nonprofit workers, community advocates, you know, we are not so far away from a lived experience, you know, if we aren't already in a lived experience of homelessness. And so what would work? What could work? And it comes out, we know that it's not just the housing, it takes services, but even behind those services, there is some impetus to build skills, to build capacity, to improve individuals' lot. And I mean, I have some holistic frameworks. We could get all into this. I'm not going to take, you know, all night with that. But essentially, if you I see it, the way I see it, you know, from the research perspective is when we're talking about homelessness, we're talking about several constituencies. There are advocates, service providers, workers, like this audience, I would imagine, is largely. There's also the foundations that bring that key leadership, like Miguel Santana and many others. There's a research and evaluation community. There are policymakers, of course, and there are people with lived experience. That's 5 or 6 different groups right there. What is needed for all the groups is this human holistic empowerment, because as people are able to work on themselves better, we all have a capacity. If you learn in anything, if you learn a skill, you will, in a particular area, you will perform better in that area. So in all of this training, it is, well, what are the skills of not being homeless? And these are things that can be taught. What are the things of accountable service provision? These are things that can be taught. I'm excited to hear, and so for philanthropies, for researchers, all of these things, I'm excited to hear about goals. But as Miguel pointed out, that this Measure A establishes an expectation of goals, but does not set goals. But having those goals clear and having real compelling buy-in that comes from real human empowerment. One thing that he said was that you know, organizations and communities that are ready to run with this money, they're going to be the ones to run with this money. Well, right there, what about the capacity building? That came up. So it is a holistic, I can't get it all right now, but these are frameworks. This is what we're calling for. And I know that everybody understands the need to build people up in all of the positions, not just those with lived experience of homelessness, and we prioritize them, obviously. But these are just some of the thoughts. So I really appreciate the time. And I know there are others who may want to speak or may want to give some feedback on that. So very grateful for a moment to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pickens. And especially thank you for, I hope I captured it right, the focus on the holistic human
empowerment. Human empowerment. Yeah, which is basically, real quick, it's capacity. I said there's human capacity. We can all learn and grow, learn skills and perform better in areas. So that's obvious. Then there is the accountability. He kept using the word accountability, but when it really boils down to all of these thousands of social workers and nonprofits with various capacity and everything, that real accountability has to come from basically the person and the organization themselves. And then, of course, the community impact. So those 3 areas of community impact, of accountability, and of human capability and capacity, those 3 areas, it's a framework. And this is something that I know is kind of right on everyone's heart. And I just want to be able to bring some articulation to that.
Yeah, no, I was going to say we would love to continue that conversation, because I think what's missing for some people around Measure A is the focus on that human improvement. Like, we can have the money, we can do the systems, we can build infrastructure, but we have to have a goal of our lives improving, and how, outside of building so many units or providing so many services, how will we begin to measure and really see that lives are improving? And so I appreciate this framework that you're bringing in. I don't know, looking at my co-chair Rhea here, maybe there's some work we can do to bring you back to talk a little bit more about that framework, because I think that feels like the missing piece in all of these conversations. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Dujon, I see a question. And if there's anyone else that hasn't had, I know there are a lot of questions in the chat. Jay, I saw your question. I don't know if you want to come off mute to ask it after Ms. Dujon, but if there's anyone else, feel free. Ms. Dujon?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say was that yes, in terms of building infrastructure and the people skills, one of the things that I noticed too is that the departments don't talk to one another. In other words, if you go to the county and you're for services, you wait for hours and hours. You may have used the computer to connect with them, or maybe you have to go in. But the services that people receive, there's sometimes a hostility, and the person who's in need of the care becomes confused, is made to feel less than, and you just can't do that, because here you have people who are in probably the worst time of their life, and when they're coming to ask for help, that's a very difficult thing to do. And to recognize that you yourself, who you thought you were capable of taking care of yourself all your life, find yourself now at a certain age and you're not able to do that. And that is also another reason that people feel really bad. They walk away and they don't go back to get help, because the help has no empathy. And I think that while you're building infrastructure, that working on the people skills is absolutely necessary. So.
Couldn't agree 100% with you, Ms. Dujon, and hopefully that is, their efforts around training. There's a program, we have some students here from Santa Monica College, the first cohort, which is a certificate program, a pipeline into the homelessness sector, where we're having these conversations and recognizing the need for ongoing empathy and skill building, but on the interpersonal skills and the empathy skills. And so totally 100%. And even when things get stressful, how do we alleviate stress from those workers so they're not passing that on to those, like you said, that are coming for help in their most vulnerable situation?
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I see Velveteen Rabbit, and then Dr. Oscar Owens, and then Rhea, maybe we need to do, before people start dropping off, our call to action after these two questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead,
Well,
Velveteen.
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment. And I've kind of experienced almost anything that could be experienced in Los Angeles County facing homelessness. And basically, I was fortunate because I took advantage of a lot of the trainings that Department of Mental Health had to offer during the time when Mark Ridley Thomas was in office as our county supervisor. And if not for those trainings, and I mean, I got involved with Operation Hope, Dress for Success, New Image. I mean, I had to really dig deeper. And what I found, because I worked for Fortune 100 companies prior to becoming homeless, that most of the people that try to work in the homeless field don't have any skills other than being homeless. So when they get a nickel over bus fare, it goes to their head and they look down on the people. And we just got to really get these people, if they want to work in the field, they got to be trained. And because a lot of times they go to big me, little you. And see, what I found is that when you tell your story to 15 different people and you don't get help, then you roll up in a tent and you give up, because, it's very painful to keep going over, well, and a lot of it ain't got nothing to do with drugs, but if you end up in a tent, you might have to use some to survive mentally. That's why they call it self-medication. So, and I'd like people to get away from, not wanting people to be in their neighborhood. They sleeping in tents. I'm here in Little Rock. I got somebody that is sleeping in a car next to the property manager, and the property managers are so ignorant, they don't even know it. So it's not just South LA or Watts or, and we got to really get the right people that have the right passion and the right skill set and the willingness. Because as MRT would say, if there's a will, there's a way. And I'm just going to be quiet and keep listening, but I'm enjoying this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for always joining, even from Arkansas. All right, Dr. Owens, our last comment question.
Thank you so much. This is really great. Mark Ridley Thomas invited me to this. I knew nothing about Measure A, first of all. So how do you change that? Number two, I'm the director of Christian education at the West Angeles Church of God in Christ in West Angeles. I also know Seth Pickens, and I'm very happy about him. This is a question. How can churches be involved, if this passes, with being assistants to these programs in their neighborhoods? Because many churches are interested in helping the homeless. What can they be involved in? How can they know what to do, et cetera, et cetera? That's it.
That's a great question. Supervisor, do you want to take on that one with the churches? Because you do so much in organizing our faith community around this issue and making sure they're at the table.
Yeah, I'm pleased to try to answer that. And grateful for Elder Owens being on the call. Perhaps Bishop Byron Smith, one of the leaders in the Empowerment Congress Leadership Corps, Pastor Michael Willis, as well as Pastor Seth Pickens and Elder Owens would be willing to have a conversation and help support and educate each other as to how more can be done from a faith perspective. Janice Martin introduced herself as the ecumenical liaison, which means she has deep relationships with the faith community. That's the way I think we can start. We need to personalize it and engage it, and I'm willing to be party to that. We have the capacity to get in touch with each one of the individuals that we spoke about. So Elder Owens, expect to hear, and let's see if we can't engage. Pastor Pickens, thinking cap on. And so the analytical piece of it is important, but the practical way in which we build community and tap into the faith community is important. Now, I noticed that there was no background music, background distraction until I start talking, and I have a suspicion who's trying to send me a message. Therefore, I will turn it back over to the co-chairs. Let's follow up, though.
Thank you, sir. I will.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to thank you all so much for taking out your time. Elder Owens, I'm so glad you said this is the first time that you're hearing about it, because that is why we do it with our motto of educate, engage, and empower, making sure, yes, the presidential elections are huge, and we know it's unprecedented and so important that we get out the vote, but there's so many issues on the ballot that it can be a little overwhelming. And so we're hoping to continue to do these teach-ins. There's other propositions. Before you take your vote, make sure you read your sample ballot or check out some of the resources in the chat, like Proposition 33, Proposition 36, Proposition 5, Measure G. These are all related to, will have some impact on our own communities, on the communities we care about, in particular our vulnerable communities and Black and Brown communities, to be very frank. And so with that, we have some call to action. And Rhea, if you want to go over those, I can start trying to put links in and
Okay,
dates and things in the chat too. We could tag team on this one.
great.
before
Thank you
you-
so much.
Sorry, before everyone closes out, I think at least half of you, a little bit over half, participated in an opening poll, which gives us some feedback just on what are people thinking about Measure A, what else did you want to know? And so we have a closing poll. So even after we do the call to action, Courtney's going to post a poll, and we ask if you can please participate, because that helps us make sure we're providing the right information that makes your time valuable in participating in these meetings. All right.
Can
so
we
one
just-
access
and
this
just-
chat after the meeting? Is there a way to get to the chat after the meeting? Because there's no way to get all of the links right now.
question.
Yes, we will make sure that this is distributed. The one and only capable Courtney Wilkins
Yep.
of the Owens will follow up with you to reach out to me. She's indicated in the chat that the poll is up, so you can start tapping into it now. Madam Co-Chair, you've done a wonderful job tonight. We thank you. I did hear Dr. Orduña, and you made reference to the presidential election is relevant. Down ballot issues are certainly relevant. This would be considered one such example, but it is critically important in terms of the quality of life for those who are yet homeless, as well as the quality of life of those of us who are not yet homeless. And it seems to me that we have to understand that. Now I'm going to step into a little bit more. There's only one presidential candidate who has an IQ about homelessness, about housing insecurity, about the matter of houselessness, about the dignity and worth of all people, irrespective of their station in life. There's only one candidate who has that level of cognizance and compassion. And it would seem to me, if you were for Measure A, you might find yourself being for that candidate. I didn't say anything. We are staying within the confines of the nonprofit work that we are doing here and now. But I repeat, there's only one candidate who has an IQ on the matter at hand.
Thank you,
I'm done for now.
Supervisor.
I'm all right.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. We couldn't think of a better closing than one from our founder himself, Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. So we'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We're grateful tonight that we were able to hear so much about Measure A from Miguel Santana, from Supervisor MRT, from Dr. Peckins, as well as, pardon? Oh, from Dr. Pickens, as well as from Shannon Murray. And so we hope, as you learned on Measure A and our other important ballot measures, we urge each of you to join us in educating, engaging, and empowering. Please help us to take action and make an empowered vote. We want to share some important upcoming dates to remember. Dr. Orduña has put those in the chat as well. But please don't keep the dates to yourself nor the information to yourself. Share them with your partner, your family, your neighbor, your pastor, your Starbucks barista, and everybody else. Shout it loud from the rooftops and everywhere across. Anyone who you cross paths with. These dates, I know our chat is pretty packed. So these dates are October 7th. County election offices began mailing the ballots. October 8th. Ballot drop-off locations opened. October 21st is the last day to register to vote. October 26th is when early in-person voting begins in all Voters' Choice Act counties. That includes LA County. So I'm going to repeat that one more time. October 26th is when early voting begins in all Voters' Choice Act counties. That includes LA County. November 5th, this is the last day to vote or drop off your vote by mail ballots in person by 8 p.m. Vote by mail ballots must be postmarked by November 5th. If after this evening you are feeling inspired by Measure A, and we hope you are, we also encourage you to join a local effort to help phone bank, door knock, and or donate to uplift the Measure A campaign. So with that, we thank you all for joining us. We encourage you to please complete the poll as well. And we hope to see you at our next Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group meeting on October 26th, I believe. Sorry, October 24th.
Good.
So, thank you, everyone.
Great job.